I'm going to call the meeting to order. Let's start with prayer. Wayne, you mind? Okay. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for allowing us to be together, Lord, to do the people's business. We pray that you'll give us fair judgment and as we make our deliberations, Lord, and let everyone have due process of law and let everyone after they've left this meeting, Lord, feel like they've been heard. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. And let's salute the flag. Okay, roll call. David Ryan. Present. Mike Davis.
Present.
Mike Allen.
Present.
Wayne Jones.
Present.
Connor Allen. Okay, first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Yes.
Yes.
Mike Allen.
Yes.
Wayne Jones.
Yes.
Next thing is consider items removed from consent. Anything? Nothing? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recognize that Connor Alford has joined the meeting and should be added to the roll.
Do you need anything else on that? Okay, first item, BOA 2021-06, request by Durant Independent School District, Washington Irving Elementary School for a variance pertaining to a replacement of a non-conforming sign for property located at 812 West Locust.
Yes, this is a request for a non-conforming sign that the Durant Public Schools is wanting to put up, or well, they're wanting to replace a sign at Washington Irving. Currently, it is a lighted letter sign. What they're wanting to put in there is a animated or moving sign. According to the ordinance, they are able to switch out the sign even though it's technically non-conforming. The reason it's non-conforming is it's within the right-of-way area or the setback area. The non-conforming sign, the reason that staff could not approve it is because it says that the replacement of the sign would reduce visual clutter. And that wasn't necessarily something that staff was comfortable saying that a lighted sign going to a digital sign would be reducing visual clutter, which is why you guys are hearing it. There was one letter of written opposition to it. As far as staff recommendations, staff does not have any issues with the sign itself, but again, we could not specifically say or have reason to say that it was reducing visual clutter. But if you guys have questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Mr. Meredith is here at the school district who can answer any potential questions you have as well.
Okay, yeah, first thing I was just going to address to everyone for all the applicants tonight is that we have a process and it's based on these four questions that we've been trained to apply everything to, so that's what we'll be utilizing as we look at these. I guess any other, I had one question, is this sign any different size-wise than any of the ones in other schools around town?
No, as my understanding that basically it's the face of the existing sign that's at Washington Irving now, that letter sign that's there. All that is being replaced with a digital sign. So the size itself is not being changed at all, and it'll be very similar to my understanding as what most of the other schools are having now.
Mr. Chairman, I have questions for Danielle. Can you just kind of briefly explain the difference between a conforming sign and a non-conforming sign?
Sure. So a conforming sign means that it currently meets all the current regulations. Obviously, within a non-conforming sign, there's usually some reason that it's not that it doesn't meet current regulations. In this instance, the sign regulation has actually been updated several times since that original sign was placed for the school district. As my understanding, the sign's been there for, 30 years, 40 years, something like that. So it's been there for a very long time. And as a lighted letter sign, there wasn't any issues with it. The location, again, is part of the issue why it's, with the size and everything is fine.
So the idea is that this sign was grandfathered in, even though current new signs would not be able to be designed like this one.
Correct.
So what's the difference between current, like a new application for a sign versus this existing sign?
So, and this all originated when a sign application was submitted to city staff. And then it was brought to me of going, I don't think we can approve this. And the reason was because it didn't sit far enough back from the roadway.
Okay.
As far as being that. But as far as non-conforming, there's evidence that it's been there for an extremely long time. So, which means it was there prior to this sign ordinance being in place.
So the dimensions and the lighting wouldn't even violate the new ordinance, it's the spacing from the road
Correct.
that is the issue?
Correct.
Understood, thank you.
I have a quick question. So you mentioned visual clutter. So in your opinion, is this an equal visual clutter? It's not less than?
And that's, in all honesty, I'm, from my understanding of what this sign was explained to me, is it would be very similar to what's there. I think really the only difference is gonna be, is that's gonna be more animated than just having a lit sign there. It is also my understanding the school district mentioned that they'd be willing to have it dimmed or something like that during the evening hours, if the need be, and I'll let Mr. Meredith kind of expand upon that if when he gets up here. But as far as the way I understand the sign looking, I don't see it being too much different other than the fact of it being an animated sign. So it's gonna have a little bit more visual flair to it than just a letter sign.
Mr. Meredith, you want to come up?
I had one last question for Danielle. You can go ahead and come, but I did have one last question. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Does the current ordinance, I know that this sign may be grandfathered in, but does the current ordinance allow for animated signs as a new request?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for hearing this, and thank you, Danielle, for all your team and all the work you've done. No, this is just simply an LED sign. It's a replacement of the old type where you take and put the letters up with a lighted background. As I told Danielle, if the brightness of it is an issue, we do not have any problem at a certain time in the evening turning it off and then turning it back on in the morning. Put some kind of timer on it if need be, if that's a necessity. Obviously, we'd like to see it where people can get messages about their school and their children. And this sign is being donated by, doesn't make any difference, but just so you'll know, is being donated by First United Bank. So we want to give them credit and say how much we appreciate them as well. So I'll answer any questions that I can from you guys.
I think we'll start walking through our questions here real quick. So the first one is application of ordinance to a particular piece of property would create an unnecessary hardship or result of exceptional practical difficulties. Any questions or anybody need further?
Yeah, so just to put some structure to that, my question to you for part one of our analysis, which we're legally required to apply, is if we rejected your request, what would be the unnecessary hardship to the school?
Well, we would just go back, keep the sign we have, obviously. The difference is where this is electronic, it'll be where our school administrators, secretaries can type in the messages that we want to get out to the children and the families basically from their computer versus someone physically going out and placing the letters. And when you see those signs like that, you typically don't see them getting updated real often to where an LED digital sign could be updated quite frequently.
Would you say, so would you say then that being unable to update your sign would limit the ability of the school to efficiently communicate about its events with students and parents?
Another form of communication, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, conditions are peculiar or particular piece of the property involved. We already spoke on the distance from the road. Any other comments on that, questions? All right, relief if granted would not cause substantial detriment to the public good or impair the purpose of the intent of the ordinance or the comprehensive plan. Is there any comprehensive plan issues?
So just to narrow down the question on there in terms of detriment to the public good. What the city staff is basically saying, in a nutshell, is they can't guarantee that the resulting sign would reduce visual clutter or visual blight. But what my colleague Mike brought up is, this sign may not be brighter in any significant way than the existing one, since they're both illuminated. It's just that one's animated and the other's not. I would like to seek your opinion on, does this new sign that will replace the existing one actually create more visual clutter, in your opinion?
I can't say that because I haven't seen it up. I mean, compared to it's a sign very similar. If you drive by Robert E. Lee Early Childhood Center on 9th Street, it's gonna be very similar to that sign. And that sign's there.
Okay.
Been there for some time, since we opened changed it to an elementary to an early childhood center.
So I guess my understanding is that there isn't an issue with creating more visual clutter in terms of ordinances. The issue is that the sign is currently too close to the road.
Yes.
Is it feasible for the school to move that back while updating the sign?
We could, it would be very expensive. Yeah. And there's not a lot, I'm not sure we can get far enough back with the parking lot there to meet the guidelines of the policy or the rules, if that makes sense.
Do you happen to know what the difference is between the current permissible distance from the road and this sign's distance from the road?
I'm gonna have to,
Yeah, I'll have to look. It's been a little bit since it's only a few feet if I remember right, as far as what's allowable and what's not. I'm trying to find
Sorry to get technical, but it seems like it matters a little.
Yeah, well, and staff went out and measured it, but again, this has been a while back, cause this was actually one of the cases that was supposed to be heard back in January, or in January, back in December. Forgot what month we're in, sorry, y'all. It's been a long month. I believe it's about 3 or 4 feet from what it's, where it's at, and it's supposed to be, I think it's 10 feet back, if I remember correctly. So, again, they're gonna face the issue, whether that's in the parking lot, it's gonna wind up being in the parking lot if it meets their current code,
So the current rule requires 10 feet, and this sign is how far from the road?
maybe 3 or 4.
Okay, so a
So-
difference of 5 or so feet?
Right.
Okay.
I have a quick question. So this,
yes, sir.
this visual clutter, so now you're gonna go to a digital sign. Is this gonna be a very active animated sign? Is this gonna be more of a passive animated sign? Is
I
it-
look for it to be more of a passive. I don't know if you pass Northwest Heights on University or Robert E. Lee on 9th Street, or intermediate school for that matter. They're pretty passive. It's not like having bright surges of light, so, based on what we have right now.
Okay, thank you.
With the current sign, it is, so you have to manually update it, but it is already illuminated?
It is, yes, sir.
Do you currently adjust the brightness of that sign, right? So I guess, because the big issue, I think, is that we need to establish a way in which this reduces clutter. The only argument I see right now is that you could lower the brightness of the new sign in a way that's not currently happening. So have we been able to mess with the brightness of the sign that's currently there up to this point?
The brightness of the current sign?
Yeah.
No, sir. It's just, unless you take bulbs out, you're not gonna reduce that.
Okay, so I guess the argument I could see for this reduces clutter is we can lower the brightness during the evening with the new sign, cannot do that with the old sign. So I think that you've got a case to be made.
Right.
The last one was minimum necessary, and I think we've established that this sign meets those needs. I saw there was one, someone wrote in. Is there anybody here to speak against the sign, or
You can ask if anybody has anything in mind.
Sure.
is there anyone here today that would like to speak for or against the sign?
Danielle, I noticed that the submitted document did not have any comments. It was just a person saying they were against it.
Correct.
But they did not elaborate.
Correct, and, staff also generally looks at where they're located, and it really wasn't immediately close to school like I kind of expected.
Okay.
So I don't know.
So we're not missing anything, like it was sent in an email and they put their comments in the body of
No.
the email as opposed to the document, that
Nope,
kind of thing?
They just sent that one piece in saying they was against it, so.
Okay.
Also, this is someone, I was envisioning this being someone who was directly across the street from the sign, but this is not anywhere, they're not there.
The address that they wrote in on here was 214 and 218 West Sycamore.
Okay.
I may say, just in the interest of fairness, if this is the same Scott Bryant, I think it is, he may have intended to be here, but he passed away recently, so
Oh.
that's a pretty good excuse for not being here.
Yeah.
Is anyone ready to make a motion, or do we have any other questions?
Well, I mean, the thing here is we apply the four-part test. Really, the only quibble here is whether the sign creates a new or visual clutter in excess of what already exists. I'm not convinced it creates visual clutter in excess of what already exists just because it's merely because it's animated. And I get why staff can't guarantee that it doesn't, but I'm not even completely sure that the four-part test is fully triggered, because I'm not 100% sure that the ordinance, as it reads, effectively means that merely because of animation we have more visual clutter. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
If that's the case, we're gonna be in here every week.
Right. So my position is just that the four-part test is easily passed, because it's, to me, I'm kind of following Mike's lead here on the idea that we have approximately similar visual clutter. They're both illuminated signs. It's just that one's moving and the other's not. So, just putting that out there.
Okay, so, I guess if nobody else has anything to add, I will make a motion to approve the variance.
Second. Okay, roll call?
David Ryan,
Yes.
Michael Davis,
Yes.
Mike Allen,
Yes.
Connor Alford,
Yes.
Wayne Jones.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
I would tell you as a ending note here, thank you, number one. Number two, we want to be good neighbors. If this becomes an issue, we'll make sure in the evening, late evenings, that it's turned off, okay? So, yeah, you have my word on that.
Appreciate the comments. Thank you, sir. Okay, item number 2, BOA 2021-07, request by Terry Ballard for variance to 157.32 district regulations pertaining to lot size requirements for property located at 2608 Rodeo Road.
Yes, Mr. Ballard came to city staff with the desire to place a manufactured home on this location. The problem that we ran into is that the current lot size is only 1 acre. With it being zoned as ag, it would have to be 5 acres, a minimum of 5 acres. Staff talked to him about the type of home that he wanted to place on there, and he wanted the manufactured home. And the only way you can have a manufactured home in the city of Durant is either in the A1 or the R4, which is a manufactured home zoning category. So his best option to be able to place a manufactured home on his lot was to ask for a variance of the lot size requirements for this lot. The staff has not received any letters or phone calls about this one. Again, the lot size requirement for ag zone lot is 5 acres. The current lot is 1 acre. Staff looked into as far as when, at some point in time, this lot was divided off, and didn't really find out when it possibly happened, but This area zoned, it was annexed into the city in the 80s or 90s, most likely, so it's, it's hard to say if it in fact was something that would be considered non-conforming. That was something that staff could not say that was in fact. We have an existing lot of record ordinance that staff also looked at, but again, the problem with that is that it had to be the same owner of the same lot since 1980, whatever, so it was annexed in, and that was not the case either. So that's why we are before you asking for a variance for the 1 acre lot. Again, staff doesn't have an issue with this as long as they meet the current setbacks for ag, which could be potentially an issue. But other than that, that's all that staff has. If you have questions, be happy to answer them, and Mr. Baller's here as well for any questions you may have for him.
I have questions. So ultimately, what we're talking about is a request for a 4 acre variance,
Correct.
because the statute would require 5 acres of property in order to build in the current zoning of this property in order to build the structure wanted.
Correct.
So my question is, the third part of our 4-part analysis says we can only approve a variance if we believe that there's not a detriment to the public good, and if it does not impair the purpose and intent of the ordinance. Can you speak to the purpose and intent of requiring 5 acres in order to have that type of home on this property?
In all honesty, I'm not sure why they came up with 5 acres for ag zone property, unless it was something that they just thought was a good round number for when that type of zoning came into be for the city of Durant.
Okay.
Generally, when you think of ag land, you're generally thinking of large tracts of land. In this particular area, and others that are zoned as ag, there are many places in Durant that we're finding that don't actually meet that 5 acre minimum any longer. So it's likely that people have just chopped up pieces of property and split them off over the years and didn't go through the correct process, which we've also seen time and time again on various lots across the city, just in general. This one, again, we couldn't figure out when it actually came to be as far as a 1 acre lot. We do know this was a piece of over 100 plus acres at one point in time. But again, there's no way of knowing that we could find of when that actually transpired.
Presumably there's other parcels of land within the city limits that are zoned this same way on which the owner may want to build a similar type of structure.
Potentially, but I think the issue that they're gonna also have is one, some of those areas may be more in a residential area than what this particular area is. There's still a lot of ag zone properties. Most of that area on Rodeo Road is still zoned as ag. This one just happens to be near a subdivision that was in place. I'm not sure when that one was actually placed there, but there is a subdivision that's there. And then on the other, directly across the street and on the other side of it, it's all large ag zone lots.
Now, I want to call attention to the aerial map up there. Appears the property is next door to a property of the same size.
So the properties that are on the west, that is all zoned as R1, and that is that subdivision. And there's another subdivision that's getting ready to start that's just to the north of that current subdivision there. It's in that triangle piece.
So if his was R1 though, it still wouldn't?
If it was R1, it would meet the requirements, but he would not be able to place a manufactured home there.
But it'd have to be rezoned.
Correct, yes.
So a possible alternative remedy would be for Mr. Bowler to go and ask for a rezoning of this property,
Correct, but he would not be able to place the manufactured home that he wants to place there.
at least not right now.
If he does the rezoning to R1, R1 does not allow for manufactured homes to be placed on a lot.
What was the other zoning category for a
R4.
manufactured home?
R4.
R4.
Right, and if the problem with trying to go to that rezoning is it would be considered a spot zoning, and that's just not good planning practice to have.
Because it would
little
target
limits.
only one property.
Correct.
Understood.
Correct.
Thank you.
So in the city's master plan, what is the intended zoning for this entire area?
So this area is on the new comprehensive plan that was adopted in September. This has this whole area as R1 eventually, or, well, I shouldn't say R1, but a single-family residential is the intent for long range. The biggest reason is because of the proximity to the airport, and you're really limited on what you can use properties for within a certain distance of the airport, which is why it was left as kind of low-density residential.
So is there any R4 in that area? Or
No, there's not.
is there any, what R4 is there in Durant city limits?
Very little, very, very little.
So Mike already asked about the intent of the ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the comprehensive plan wants this all to be, you said R1?
Yes, low-density residential, yes.
Okay. Is there a particular reason the city in its comprehensive plan designated this area for residential?
Again, it was mostly due to the proximity of the airport. Within that distance, there's such things as like normal ag uses may create hazards for the airport, which is why and we've just went down this road just a little while ago with Planning Commission and City Council. So that's kind of why I chuckle about it, but that's just something that we just have to be cautious of as far as there's certain distances from that airport that you can and can't do things. And that's federal regulations for FAA.
Okay, so the intent of the comprehensive plan then is to prevent dangers to the airport and comply with federal law?
Correct.
Any more questions for the city? Mr. Ballard, would you like to come up?
Yes.
Any comments or anything before we get started?
I understand some of the ordinance with the manufactured house. I used to live in one. I swore I'd never live in another one as far as what I lived in prior. But I've looked at these houses and they're very well built. It's going to be professionally put in. The loan company's going to take care of everything. They're going to come in. They're going to landscape the land. They're going to put all that in there. They're going to put proper drains in, a proper concrete pad. It's going to be anchored to the ground. The axles are going to be coming out from under it, so everything is going to be as cold as I can get it. I mean, it's just the reason why we didn't go with a foundational home is I don't think that I ever got approved for one. We actually run across this one with we found it and they ran our credit and it was great. It was good enough for them. We asked them about maybe putting a foundational home on it if they would approve a loan for that, and they won't. The particular loan company that we're dealing with won't allow that. They don't deal with foundational homes. They deal with the mobile home company or the manufactured home company that we're working with. I'm willing to do whatever necessary to get this house put there. It's a new house. It's brand new, hadn't even been built yet. You know, I just make a phone call tomorrow morning if I'm approved, and they'll start the process, and the process will come out. They'll come out. They'll take care of everything. They're going to level the house that's there, which is dilapidated and needed to be gone long ago. I used to live in it. The reason why I can't do anything with that house is it has a cracked foundation on it in about 3 different places. If you look at it, the house kind of leans off, and it's just coming apart. So it's going to come down regardless of what happens here. But I'd like to be able to put something there. And the foundational home is just not in my budget right now. And this house is a really nice house, and it's there's one behind me, a manufactured home behind me. So I was hoping that y'all might consider that as well. I mean, maybe a 5-acre tract. I don't even know. I'm sure it is if they had to come in front of the board to get the okay to put the house there. But if I had been surrounded in foundational homes, I wouldn't be asking this question. But I'm putting one literally in my backyard, so I'm looking to, just set one up in front of it.
Instead of go through all the questions as we've established, I'm just ask questions and relate
Sure.
to whichever one you want.
Yeah, I mean, I'm somewhat relating this back to our requirements, but
Sure.
Mr. Ballard, one of the requirements, of course, is that we have to, in order to approve this, it has to be true that the hardship is peculiar to the property in question. In other words, this is unique property, or you've been put in a unique situation compared to other land that is zoned general agriculture on which someone may want to put a manufactured home.
Right.
Surely there's other property in Durant that's zoned this way there would also be a prohibition on putting this kind of home. So can you explain to me what makes your property unique in this particular situation?
Unique is in what type of, unique, it's only 1 acre. That's
I
the,
think I can elaborate on the fact that there's already mobile homes around there. You said there was one right behind.
there's one behind me. I mean, the lady that moved in there, we moved in, when I first made an agreement with the previous owner to buy the property, I bought it as a rent-to-own situation. And about a year and a half, maybe 2 years into me living there, somebody put in a mobile home right behind me. I mean, literally less than 100 yards from my back door.
I was just going to angle that may not be this case in your scenario.
That's a fair point. Are there other ways that you could utilize this property? Is there other structures that you could purchase or erect on this property to make use of the property? Is there a specific reason that you're wanting to put a manufactured home on this?
The manufactured home is because we happen to like this home, obviously, but yeah, we want out of Cartwright. We want out of Cartwright. I live on a dirt road,
Yeah.
and the house that we live in now is quite dilapidated as well. I mean, it's still livable. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, but that. Come on up here. I moved out of that house that we're looking to tear down, and moved in with her when she became my girlfriend, and we're basically wanting to get out of Cartwright. We really are. I mean, it's
getting really horrible there. I used to never be afraid, but
Oh, you
I
live there,
am
what?
terrified now to go
Seven-
out. and
I used to
drive.
live on Wilfa Woods Road. I know exactly what you're talking about.
we live on 4th Street there, not far from the water tower, behind the water tower there. So
His land is perfect, smooth. There's places that we can create for our grandkids. We have a place that he can work in, and it's enough land to suit us for what we need.
yeah, we're not bringing in a whole family. It's just us two,
Yeah,
by the way.
And our dogs.
We have a dog, inside dog. So
Danielle, I have one question. Danielle, are there size requirements for home in this area? I mean, do we have a minimum, maximum
As far as the size of the home itself that's built?
for the current zoning?
For the current zoning, if it's for a manufactured home, like I said, manufactured home is allowed. We just updated the manufactured home ordinance again last year sometime, and that does require a permanent foundation, and I believe that, and it requires it to be a brand-new manufactured home, which they stated that it was, and there's a whole permitting process that'll go in, should it be approved. As far as if it was a stick-built home, building code would take over, and I don't believe there is anything in building code saying that it has to be a minimum size. Now, it does have to meet the setback requirements, which generally dictate the size of a house that's being built there. The setbacks for ag is, the building coverage is 30%, but that's including accessory building. Again, I don't foresee that being an issue, because that's, we're still talking about a 1 acre lot. The front has to be a 50-foot setback. Your sides would have to be 25, rear would be 50. So that would just have to fit within that footprint.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of a manufactured home that would be 700 square feet
Oh, okay.
versus one that would be more, I think, what you're looking at. I'm just wanting to know if is code going to dictate anything like that?
I don't believe, I'm trying to remember, that's one thing I did not bring with me this evening. I don't believe it does, as far as, there may be something in there for the older manufactured homes. but I don't believe there's a minimum size requirement for the,
What is the square footage of this home?
She's looking that up right, well, I thought she was looking that up.
It is
It's a it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath.
smaller than our house now. It's like 1,400.
Okay.
Yeah, 14, 15, something like that.
So Danielle, I've got a couple questions, and I'm sorry for going back to city staff, but, and Mr. Beller, weigh in if you feel like you need to. Mr. Beller has raised the prospect there's an immediately adjacent manufactured home. The question is whether or not it exists on property that permits it in terms of zoning, or whether a prior variance was created for that. Can you speak to that?
I am not aware of any variances that occurred in this area. I have not looked, are you talking about, which piece of property are you talking about? The
He
one
said
that's
behind him.
Behind him?
Is
Where
it
that
south of
driveway
your
is?
property?
What is behind to the west?
See that, where that red square is?
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's Rodeo Road right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Okay, I'm in the red square, correct?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, behind me, there's a manufactured home right there.
To the north,
You're
right there.
At that long driveway?
That is a
At the
manufactured
end,
home.
at the end of the
And
long
that would be
driveway.
an acre, that would be larger than 5 acres lot and zoned as ag, yes.
Okay. So that's zoned agricultural, but it's larger than 5 acres?
Correct.
Okay.
So actually, I do have a question about that, because I'm kind of just looking at the forms, and it says that the surrounding properties to the north are residential.
Correct.
And that.
Is to your left of the red square on the map.
Oh, to the left, so that'd be, so that'd be what, the west, east? East, yeah, sorry. Those are also zoned I mean, like, so it says that everything around it is residential, so there shouldn't be.
The use, not the zone.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, yeah, yeah, okay.
Oh, last question
Yes.
that I have, and then I promise I'm done. If this property were to be used for something other than the erection of manufactured housing, but let's say traditional housing, stick-built housing,
Right.
regardless of size or whatever, would that be legal to build on this 1-acre property?
Yes.
Okay, so the real, part of the meat of this is that it's a manufactured home. Understood.
Danielle, can I ask, why, aren't manufactured homes usually allowed in these, zones?
Yeah, manufactured homes are allowed in ag zone property. Again, the problem with this one is that the ag zoning requires a minimum lot size of 5 acres, and this is 1 acre. So staff cannot issue a building permit when it doesn't meet current zoning.
Okay, so I guess, maybe my question is like, why do you need it to be ag zoned to do a manufactured home?
So that happened back when we updated the previous manufactured home ordinance, which allowed for a manufactured home by use of a conditional use permit to be placed on lots that were zoned R1, R2, and R3. The city council decided that they did not like that, the way that was gone forward, and their ultimate decision was to only have them in areas that was zoned as A1 as well as R4. That was what they ultimately decided whenever it came down to the ordinance updates.
Thank you.
And then I guess, Mr. Bowler, I'll have a
Yes.
question for you too, if that's okay. This is actually, I think, kind of relating back to Mike's question earlier.
Okay.
So if you had a 1-acre plot 10 miles down the road, and we told you you can't put a manufactured home on that, would you have the same hardship that you're currently having now? Because it has to be peculiar, in order for us, before we are allowed to grant the variance.
Right.
There has to be some unique characteristic to this specific plot that would create special hardship that would not exist for a similar plot somewhere else in the city. Does that make sense to you? See the issue? So is there some unique characteristic that says, I have to have this plot?
It makes things so much easier on me. I mean, it's closer to my work. As opposed to me now driving 20 miles to work, I can drive just across town.
I'm gonna comment again about the manufactured home behind him, and I'm also concerned about the lack of
zoning that's even available in the city. I've been told that you have to have 5 acres of agricultural land in the city limits, and we already have a limited amount of R4 that the city has told us has been granted. So I have, as far as the peculiar part, I'm focusing more on those two issues.
I mean, a lot of that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this is it gets me closer to work. It's a better neighborhood. You live in Williford Woods, so he understands the situation I'm in. She's lived there for long, and she's just wanting out. I lived there for about 6 months when I first moved here back in 2001. Moved directly to Durant after that, and I've been in Durant. I rented that place in 2002. Started buying it in 2003. Had it paid off in 2009, 2010, and had a little legal issue with the owner. We finally got the property, and so I haven't been able to do anything with it. Financial reasons. That's changed. I have a better job now. Things are loosening up a little bit, so that's what I want to do. I want to move forward with it. And I had bought the original property, for the original purpose of doing exactly what I'm asking for now, is putting a home there. Because the house that's there now, it's not livable. I use it as a storage space now. So, yeah, but as far as being unique and peculiar, I guess it does get me closer to home, and it's just a better area of the neighborhood.
Any more questions or motions?
I don't have a question or a motion, but I will make a comment. Just thinking about this and having done my homework on the documents submitted, and I empathize with the situation that Mr. Bowler and family are facing, I'm not sure that I can in good faith vote yes on this, in part because I'm not convinced the conditions are peculiar to the property in question. I think everyone who owns property that's zoned in this category yet is only 1 acre in size is far from the 5 acres necessary that the Planning and Zoning Commission put in place as a requirement for this property. Additionally, I'm not convinced that there's an unnecessary hardship, which is part 1 of our analysis, placed on the requesting party. I think there is a hardship. I'm not convinced that it's an unnecessary hardship. The property can be used. The property can be used to build a certain type of home, just not the specific type of home the requester wants to build. And so, my comments to the rest of the board are that. Thank you.
Actually, I will ask one more question.
Sure.
So, Mr. Ballard, you mentioned that the specific loan company you've been working with has simply told you they don't do foundational homes. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Have you looked at any other loan companies?
We had 3 that we were looking at, and this one,
It's the down payment that
Yeah.
we struggle with having for a
they're asking for down payments of
we have
upwards $30,000 or $40,000, which is 20 to 30% of the home. That's a huge hardship there. This is going to be if we move this mobile home in here, this manufactured home, they're taking the land as collateral, and that's it. There's no, other than closing costs, there's no money out of pocket, so it makes it much more financially feasible for us to be able to afford. And we had a choice between conventional and FHA, and we chose which one did we choose? I think we chose the conventional way because it was going to be a little bit easier on us as far as qualifying, I guess. But yes, the down payment, that wasn't thinking about that, but yes, it's the down payment usually they're asking like 20 or 30%, and that's not in my wheelhouse right now. I don't know that 20 or 30% of $30,000 or $30,000 would ever be, at least not right now.
Danielle, I have one question. Did we get any responses from any of the neighbors?
No, we did not. There was no calls or responses from neighbors in that area.
Okay.
I have had some of my neighbor next door that is in the property. She's actually called me 2 or 3 times with people that have wanted to purchase the property. That's when I started looking at this, and that's when I realized that the restrictions that I would be that they as well as I have to go through, and that's I wished I had been able to had a chance today to get with my neighbor. I would have brought her here with me, because she said that's a perfect place to build on, perfect place to put something there. I said a mobile home would be great. And like I said, I wouldn't be asking for the mobile home if there wasn't one set right behind me. You know, so it's not unusual to the area to have a mobile home there, because there's one right behind me. You know, so I'm not adding anything that wasn't there in the first place. And I understand I guess I understand a little bit about the 5 acre thing. I get it, 5 acres, but this was, and if I had went out and bought an acre from somebody to cut away from that area, that's a little different. This was already there. You see what I mean? The property had already been cut out, and I purchased that property by itself years after it had already been cut out. I think the owner I bought it from has records back to 1994, and it still was that 1 acre. So it's been, well, we looked back, went over to the records department, and back in the 60s, it was that way. So it's been there for that long. I don't know how much further back I could have went, but I think we found something in the 60s, 63, maybe. But I wouldn't be even asking this if there wasn't one behind me. You know, I understand the idea of the foundation homes, and that's why I'm asking for this variance, because it's like I said, I'm not moving in a 1970s mobile home either. I'm moving in a brand new one. Hasn't even been built yet. And they're be set on a solid foundation, anchored down, axles removed. Everything is going to be as good as it can be done.
Any other questions?
No.
Ready for a motion by anyone?
I'll move to motion to approve the variance.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, roll call.
David Lyons,
Yes.
Mike Davis,
No.
Mike Allen,
Yes.
Connor Alford,
No.
Wayne Jones.
Yes.
Okay, motion approves. We will need, nothing further from you, it's approved.
It's approved. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yep.
There's building permit process that you'll have to go.
Oh, no, I understand. I've got to get with the loan company.
It'll be you, whoever your contractor is, that's gonna build the home, will build the home.
Y'all have a great day.
Okay, sorry, technical issues here. Third request is BOA 2022-01, request by Jose Navez for a variance of 157.032 district regulations pertaining to lot size requirements for property located 1415 West Mississippi.
The applicant came to staff with the request of building a duplex on the home. The lot is zoned as R2, which is an allowable use for the duplex. However, the problem is that the size of the lot the width of the lot is extremely small. Therefore, it does not meet the requirements of the minimum lot size for an R2 for a duplex. The minimum for an R2 for a single family is 6,000 square feet and 60 foot of frontage, so it doesn't even meet the requirements for that. It doesn't meet the requirements. The 80 foot is the minimum lot width for a duplex. So that's the reason that it is before you. When I talked with the applicant about the type of home that they were wanting to build, he said it would be basically a 2-story duplex, was my understanding of the conversation. The questions and concerns that staff has regarding this is the amount of parking that's required, which is a minimum of 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. So that'd be 4 parking spots is that they'd have to have, as well as the, as far as meeting the setbacks and having the home meet setbacks being a 50-foot wide lot. It is, the lot is 50 by 180, so the width is perfectly fine, or the length of the lot is perfectly fine. It's the width at the roadway that is the issue. Staff did receive a letter of support for this applicant. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I believe the applicant's here as well.
Okay, just real quick, the code versus what this property is again?
So current code requires for a single family, requires a minimum lot area of 6,000 square feet or 60 foot of lot width. And then for a duplex, 80-foot lot width and 8,000 square feet. This current lot is 50 by 180, so it has a 50-foot lot width.
80 down to 50, right?
Yes, or, yeah, for a duplex, yes.
So my question is, what could be built on a piece of property with only 50-foot width?
Being zoned as
Legally,
R-
with no variance?
without a variance at all, and they left it as R2, they wouldn't be able to build on it.
Anything?
No, because it doesn't even meet the minimum lot width for the single family in R2. They'd have to go through a rezoning process or a variance process in order to do that. That area is primarily made up of R2 as well. So again, for rezoning, they'd be looking at a spot zoning type of situation
Okay.
on that piece.
So there is a house currently there, right?
I believe that was demoed. There was a demo that was done on the existing
There
house
wa-
that was there.
There was a house on that lot.
There was at one point, yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna narrow in on the specific part of possibly granting the minimum possible variance to make use of this property.
Yep.
What's being requested is a duplex, which would require a 30-foot variance to shrink the requirement from 80 feet width to 50 feet. But if the if the variance requester today were to build an alternative structure, a single-family home, not a duplex,
Right.
they would only be requesting a variance of what, 10 feet?
Correct.
Understood, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. 180.
Is the, Mr. Navarez, is he here? Is the presenter? Okay, okay.
Wear that because my grandkid's in. I'm here for Mr. Narvaez. My name's Brian Moore. What he's wanting is the duplex. There was a house there, and the city condemned it, and there's pretty much a trap house. So
Yikes.
Luis has bought about half of this block over there, and he's trying to clean this area up. And he's going to try to put in this duplex. They're gonna be a little bit higher, you know, to maintain and, of course, to rent, but he owns the house just to the south of that, which is almost a $300,000 house that he's put in over there. He's trying to clean this area up, so he asked me to come and see if y'all would allow him to build that. He also built the police department as well here.
So I don't know if you're able to answer this for him, but would Mr. Navarez be interested in building a single resident home instead of a duplex if we did grant the 10-foot variance but did not grant the 30-foot variance?
He would rather have both of those there. I mean, there's plenty of parking for it. I mean, we've checked it, so. I don't know what,
Do you have
What
any
you're gonna
blueprints or anything
require.
you can provide to show that you'll be
Yep.
able to build a adequate amount of parking for 4
Yes.
people safely?
let me get this here. This is the residence and dwelling. This is gonna be the front. Yes. Of course, it's gonna have stairs on the side. You don't have to look at the second
the property line drawn out anywhere?
The one that was on there, the house was actually, I believe it was a little closer to the street. The one that he tore down.
And just so everyone can hear, because we were having a conversation off mic,
Yeah.
you said that you can park under the porch as well.
Yes, it can be like a lean-to porch, but the stairwell will be on the side.
It should also be noted that for buildings that are more than one story, the minimum width of the side yard of all lots shall not be less than 10 feet. So that is something that needs to be, and it says, building or structure may exceed the, never mind, that doesn't require here. So the maximum height is also 35 feet of this, so not that that would come into play in this particular one, but the side setbacks would, so.
But the only request for this variance is a width variance.
Correct,
Okay.
it's a lot size requirement, so, but whenever staff looks at it, we're gonna have to look at whether or not they can place that at all,
Right.
so.
So Danielle, you just said it's a 10-foot from property line to building line?
So
And
for,
your building would be, how wide could your building be?
so how wide is that? 23, okay, so they're showing a 23-foot wide structure, and the lot is being at 50 feet, so then my math is really bad, so, what, 30,
30, so that building could in essence,
27, we lost the engineers in the back. So you're looking at 27 feet, that's, depending on where it is on the lot, you're looking at each, let's see, the lot width of side yard on all lots shall be not less than 10 feet. So, and you're looking at, for a front, you're looking at, that's gotta be 25 feet back, and then, 20 feet in the rear, and then 10 feet on sides.
and then the other thing I didn't write down, so we needed a square footage, we needed an area for the lot, had to be a minimum of what?
So the minimum square footage of the lot that's required for a duplex is 8,000 square feet. This one is 9,000 square feet only because of how long the lot is.
So just to make sure we're all on the same page here, there is 10 feet on both sides, or there technically could be 10 feet on both sides, and he could move it back as far as he needs to because it's super deep. So the
Or maybe you
the
can
part
put the
that you were
parking in the
making
back if you
would be,
want.
would be met, right?
The,
Whatever you want.
yeah, the side yard, from what I interpret this, would have to be 10 feet on both sides.
Danielle, can I just ask, do you think it is possible to meet all of the setback and parking requirements on this plot?
With the duplex, I'm not sure, with it being only 20-some feet wide,
So-
possibly.
But what about with a not duplex?
With a not duplex, yeah, definitely, because then you're only looking at a minimum lot width of 60 feet, and then you're not gonna be, you're only gonna be looking at most likely one story, or you're not gonna have
I will interject there though and say the sides are still not an issue with
Okay.
either one. The duplex doesn't violate the side either. But, so the difference of saying, would you, doing a single home resident versus double, well, we haven't established that. I mean, the only issue that I've heard so far would just be parking.
Well, part of the difference is that for the duplex, we're granting a 30-foot width variance versus for the other type of structure, we'd only be granting a 10-foot width
I understand,
variance.
but your question was, a single home residence meet the needs and this one wouldn't? And
Yeah.
the answer to that is not correct, because this one already meets the needs of
Yeah.
the side.
I think, okay, so I see what you're saying. I think it's a good point. So here's what, where I'm thinking, perhaps you can speak to this.
Yeah.
So the 4 points we have to go through. First, the application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship. You get stuck with a piece of property you're not allowed to build
Right.
on. I think that's an unnecessary hardship. It is peculiar to this property because of its bizarre shape, so you satisfied that point, as far as I'm concerned. It's the last two that I'm not sure about yet. So C, relief if granted would not cause a substantial detriment to the good or impair the purpose or intent of the ordinance or comprehensive plan. And I might ask the city staff for their input on that. And then the last one, the variance, if granted, would be the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship. The minimum necessary is the 10-foot variance to build a single home. So is there a reason why it absolutely has to be a duplex?
Not necessarily, but monetarily to recover what he's paid for the property to clear that out. I mean, unless the city wants somebody to put a trailer house in the middle of town there, I don't.
We
Well, they could do
should have addressed this earlier,
Yeah.
but
Exactly.
just so everyone in the room knows, financial hardship is not, or we're
Right.
not able to consider. And
Right, I
should've
understand
I should have
that.
mentioned that earlier, but I just want us all to know that in the room.
I do understand that part. But like I said, the house that was there was right up against the road. I don't know.
I think the angle that would be most beneficial to your argument is that the single wide home is no bigger footprint than the double.
Right.
I think the issue is with the double, we've got more cars now. Are we able to accommodate the new situation? Because the actual footprint on the lot would be no different. It just,
Except with this, if a single family if it's one story, the setbacks, you're at 5 and 5 on each side versus 10 and 10.
right,
So you're having more, you're able to spread it out just a little bit more.
right. I'm just talking about the house he's
Right,
trying to build.
exactly.
Right.
And if there
I'm just
wasn't a
letting you
second
know.
story there,
Right.
it would, and we were talking about a property that was the right size, this would be approved with the setbacks that are required. Cause it meets the 10 feet.
No, what is the frontage, what is the width of the lot have to be for single family?
60 feet.
60 feet, and we are at 50 feet.
Correct.
So that would require it, although it could fit on the lot, it would require a variance to make up that 10 feet.
Right.
And right now, although you might be able to get a 2-story on the lot, we would need an 80-foot width
Correct.
Or a 30-foot variance.
or a 30-foot
I think
variance.
what has to be considered here before a motion is made is what we're gonna make a motion for. Because if we're gonna make a motion for a single home, we're applying for a duplex. Is that what has to be a motion, or
Yes.
can there be a motion?
It would be up to the applicant as far as whether or not they would want to build a single-family home.
That's
Do
what
we
I'm
have to wait
answering.
for them to re-request with a different type of request,
In this,
yeah,
in this case, let's say the applicant says, yeah, I'd be fine building a single-family home there, it would meet the requirements, et cetera. Then it would still be required the variance, but you could do that on this, at this meeting. You
So-
would not have to go through the process again.
okay.
So if we voted tonight
Mhm.
on a duplex, would we
Correct.
also be able to vote on a single?
Yes, so if you could go either way, whichever way that you chose, because all it says is the requirement of the lot size requirements. It doesn't give a specific, but that's,
What if our motion didn't mention the type of structure requested, but simply approved a 10-foot variance, which clearly wouldn't permit the duplex, but would permit the single-family dwelling? We just constructed a motion that said, we approve a 10-foot variance.
yeah, you could do that as well.
Okay.
So I guess my
There's already a 10-foot
Yeah,
variance.
their 10-foot variance is for a duplex already.
No,
No, it's
so.
30-foot for duplex.
Okay, so let's pause here. So 80-foot lot by standards for a duplex, 60-foot for a single family. This lot is 50. So if for a variance, you're looking at either a
Yeah.
potential 10-foot variance or 30-foot variance.
We're talking about two different 10 feet, though. The 10 feet side setback was 10 feet.
It was 10 feet
you're
for the
talking
side
about-
setbacks if it's greater than
talking
one
about the
story.
Frontage. You're wanting a 10-foot, you're talking about possibly a 10-foot variance on the frontage, not the side setbacks. Because the side setbacks are 10 feet.
For a 2-story, yes.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
So I guess maybe, and I think, David, you might have been getting at this a moment ago. If we first made a motion to approve a variance for 30 feet and that motion failed, could we then make another motion to instead approve a variance for the 10-foot and vote on that?
Yes, you could. If you had one motion that failed, you could make another motion, but, yeah, you could do that.
Do y'all wanna vote on both,
I would recommend making a motion and seeing if there's a second, and if there is no second, then that motion dies due to lack of a second to the motion.
Do you have anything that will show us with lot lines that you can fit the parking in there?
Bring us up to you.
For simplicity's sake, we could just say we grant the minimum necessary variance to build a single-family dwelling. That's a pre-existing structure? It's still there? I think that's irrelevant to the request.
Based on what he showed me, it appears there will have to be parking, in the front of the property within the 50 feet that we're talking about. So duplex with, and is there any setback with the parking? So can he use all 50 feet, or does?
Is my understanding that you can have the parking be within a setback. It just cannot be in the right of way.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I wouldn't know. I did not even look at the right of way. We'd have to look at that a little, but. I don't. Right, and I wouldn't foresee an issue, vaguely. We've had quite a few recently on, that's in that same area, so, I don't foresee it being an issue as far as having the parking in the front of the house.
So Danielle, I have another question then. Do we have a requirement for amount of green space? Would this apply if this was a duplex? Are we gonna be required to have a 20 or 30% green space that can't be hardened?
So for the requirement, it has a building coverage, which is that same type of deal of 35% of the lot. So you'd have to have 35, you're only allowed to cover up 35% of the lot of building.
And that would include building, but not necessarily pavement for drives.
It says building coverage, so building coverage would only be the building itself.
Yeah, it's only required 8,000 and we have 9,000.
And there is no impervious, which would include the parking lot.
I gotta do my math now.
Danielle, do you think if we did, I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
If we did grant the 30-foot variance and built a duplex on this property with the parking in front, do we have reason to think that that would be a detriment to the public good or impair the purpose either of the ordinance or the city's comprehensive plan?
So the comprehensive plan doesn't have this area as mixed residential. What that mixed residential will mean is a new category that Durant's not had before, but that will mean a mixture of anything from single family up to multifamily. So it would meet, having a duplex would meet within that general requirement of mixed residential. As far as the public good or the ordinance, as long as they was able to finagle a way to get the setbacks and parking met, I wouldn't foresee an issue there. That's what's only staff's concern based on looking at the drawing and not knowing where it was on the lot.
So then, what would happen if we granted that variance, they tried to finagle it, and then discovered it was unfeasible, and we wound up with a structure that was non-compliant?
He would have to submit the plans and everything with setbacks to get a building permit. So he'd have to show that it met the building before the structure was ever even built.
questions or motions?
So for our first motion, I'll go ahead and move to approve the request as currently articulated for the duplex.
Is there a second? No second. Is there any other motions?
I will motion to grant a 10-foot variance allowing for a single resident, location.
Is there a second? Roll call?
David Rhines,
Yes.
Michael Davis,
Yes.
Mike Allen,
Yes.
Connor Elfer,
Yes.
Wayne Jones.
Yes.
Okay, so a 10-foot variance has been approved, which is enough to build a single-family home residence.
What do I need to do to get the variance, or, I mean, we've got 9,000 feet of property here, but
So the way this works is that the Board of Adjustments' decision is final. That there is no further board that you can go to. If you want to appeal their decision, it'd have to go through district court.
okay, but
So in other words,
So
what he
we
can
can-
do at this point in time is he can apply for a building permit to place a single-family home on the
Okay.
lot.
Yeah.
If he chooses not to do that and he wants to appeal the decision of the Board of Adjustment, it would have to go through district court at the county.
okay, thank you.
All right, the last topic is BOA 2022-02, request by Texoma Victory Real Property Investment LLC for a variance to 157.032 district regulations pertaining to the front setback requirements for property located near West Main Street, Highway 70.
So this is for preliminary plat of Phase 2, which is kind of the backside of this development. The preliminary plat was adopted by the City Council and Planning Commission back in July of 2001, and they approved it. They originally submitted the plat with the 15-foot setbacks. City Council approved it with the 25-foot setback, and so their only option at this point, and they still want that 15-foot setback, their only option is to get a variance for that 15 feet. So they only want it for lots 1 through 11 and 26 and 27. The engineer of the project states that the application, or stated on the application that there is a 30-foot gas easement that runs to the back of lots 1 through 4, and a 50-foot gas easement that runs along the back sides of 5 through 11, and then increasing the buildable area for lots 26 and 27. Now, 26 and 27 were near an area, or right next to an area that was granted a variance about a year ago or so for Phase 1. So they are before you asking for a 10-foot setback, or 10-foot variance of the front setback for this preliminary plat. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and the applicants are also here to answer any questions.
Only have a couple questions. Is it your opinion that a 30-foot gas easement on the back of these lots would make the conditions of this particular property peculiar to the property? Or is that more common than I think it is?
I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that, because I don't know where all the gas lines are. That's typically nothing that we get involved with. The concern that, I shouldn't say a concern, but the applicants did come in, buy the property, platted out themselves as far as where they wanted the lots. And so that's, and I don't know the reason why. One of the questions that was raised by a staff member was, why wasn't this platted to include the gas easements? Because we had one last year where it abutted the Methodist church there, and there's that steep incline there. So again, it's just kind of that same question, kind of coming back and with the gas easements. I'm not real sure where all these gas easements are, to be honest. That's nothing that the city has record of.
Let me just, if you don't mind, this is, I'm familiar with the previous, one that was granted. We're on the same side of the street, further down the street
Yes.
of the same, so what we're talking about is these houses are already built and they're already moved up
No,
10
not these, no. This is a
No,
different,
no, the first
The
ones.
previous
The first
variance.
ones,
Previous
yes.
variance, the previous
yes,
variance.
sorry, yes,
The
sorry, I
house is
apologize.
already moved up 10
Yes.
feet. And
Correct.
on the same road, on the same side of the street.
There's some different roads in this area, cause
Well,
but it's in that
further-
same general
Venus
area.
Road was the road that we were on
Yes,
before.
Venus is the road that we did the variance for previously.
Yeah.
And then this
And I-
variance is gonna include Venus and, Mars.
Okay. But, so, when you go up Jupiter, I was out there today, so I was at the church. You go to the right, and then you start heading, back north. And on the right-hand side, the houses that are already built are moved up 10 feet. And
Yes.
that was done to
Yes.
avoid having to do a retaining wall, but I saw that we're doing a retaining wall. Okay, so the retaining wall is getting built on the same side of the street, and we're further down on that same side of the street. So if we were not to grant this, these houses would sit 10 feet further back. Okay.
No, this is for lots 26 and 27.
26 and 27 would set back equivalent to the ones we granted a year ago.
That will show the area of the lots they're wanting. So it's 26 and 27 are gonna be the lots on the far east side of the subdivision. The other lots are gonna be there's a detention pond there in the corner, and then it'll kind of wrap around, on the west side of the property.
And what I'm saying to be, lots 26 and 27 would be equivalent to what we approved a year ago.
Correct, yes.
And then everything else would be, I'm not gonna say new, but
It would be, the way they're viewing it is that is a loop, and they're viewing it as that they want it uniform across the loop.
To clarify my previous comments then, we're not talking about we're actually talking about instead of the houses that we granted on before.
Lot 11, that L shape, and then the 26 and 27 are outlined in blue.
Where's the gas easement?
It's the top, and then the far left side. So
Okay.
here, and at the very top across.
So does
So
the
it's on
gas,
the opposite side of the neighborhood than the one that we gave the one last time.
So,
This right here is the one that we gave the variance.
no,
Yeah, further down.
it's
Further
south.
down, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's along that same street, yes.
Yeah.
Here's the church,
Yes.
here's the variance.
Right.
Now we're talking about the other side.
So 1 through 17, or 1 through 11, where it wraps around.
Let's see the numbers you keep.
oh, it's in the circles. It's in the circles. Yeah.
Got it, the circle number.
And then you'll see the detention pond, and then 26 and 27.
26 and 27 would actually be share
It would
property
have-
line
it would
with one
abut,
that's already
correct.
been.
So just kind of getting down to brass tacks, if we don't grant this variance, are houses gonna have different, I mean, houses are gonna have different setbacks in the same neighborhood,
Correct.
ultimately. So they're gonna,
At the end of the day,
some are gonna
yes.
look closer to the road, and some are gonna look further back from the road.
Correct.
The ones
If
in
we
the-
granted a variance, it would look uniform.
Exactly.
Okay,
The ones in the mid,
Yeah.
it's already different in there. The ones on the outside are different than the ones on the inside.
fair, yeah,
But they'll be uniform or on the outside.
Around the outside.
right.
Yeah.
That
That's peculiar.
means something to me. I mean, uniform looks for a neighborhood matters, and it's half the reason for setbacks in zoning is uniform looks. So, yeah, okay.
Will this variance be dangerous in any way? I mean, if we already granted, I would assume not.
Not,
Our phase two, actually, 1 year ago, we very appreciate this committee approve, phase one, so I think about the, townhouse, variance, right? I think it's 16 house, variance, so.
Sir,
all
I'm sorry, can you state your name for us?
Phase two, phase one, we have,
Your name.
my name is
Yes.
Henry, yeah, Wu and Ben is my partner, and engineer Van and Danny, and the builder is, our construction manager is Steve, yeah, that's our team, you know. Yeah, we come here to build a good house for a resident, and for phase one, we get approved for 16 house, the setback 10 feet, and all the resident is very happy about that. They have a bigger backyard, and we build a retention wall, you know. I think this committee is the same goal to, you know, make a resident happy and make a community better. So phase two, we will do the same applicants for the 26 and 27, and also the back end, north back end, lots 1, 2, 3, 4 until 11. Two reasons. One reason is it's uniform. It's a very strong reason, because if we see one community, the same road, although it's a different name, it's the same road, Venus, connected to the Mars Avenue. So this is one reason. Second reason is the gas pipeline is a high pressure pipeline. It's different with a normal pipeline. It requests like 50 feet easement. So for the safety reason, we also hope the house will be further away from that pipeline. That's a kind of second reason, you know. Any questions, please ask us for engineer, for our construction manager, or my partner, you know. Thank you.
Danielle, I'm sorry, so does the city staff think that there will be any danger posed to the public with this variance?
not that we can foresee.
Any other questions? Or looking at me? Yes, absolutely.
I'll go ahead and motion to approve the variance.
Roll call. Oh, sorry. Second. Is there a second? My apologies.
I'll second.
Now roll call.
David Run,
Yes.
Mike Davis,
Abstain.
Mike Allen,
Yes.
Connor Alford,
Yes.
Wayne Jones.
Yes.
Okay, it's approved, and I call the meeting adjourned.
I voted no last time there was a variance for the same property, so I had abstained this time. Otherwise, I'm inconsistent. I know.